Let's now see how to work with files and folders in Node.js. Unlike JavaScript for the browser, Node.js grants us full access to the local file system. This is something we typically don't encounter using browser-based JavaScript, making this a new area for many developers. So let's explore how to accomplish this in Node.js. First, we need to require the module that assists us with managing files and folders, known as FS, which stands for File System. Let's go ahead and require this module. To kick things off, our first task is to read a simple text file. So we'll create a text file and add some content to it. Now let's proceed to read this file. Let's rename the variable that stores the FS module from OS to FS. To read our text file, we'll invoke FS and utilize the readFileSync function. You may notice there's also a readFile method, which we'll revisit later when we explore asynchronous methods. For now, we'll stick to the synchronous approach with readFileSync. This function requires a parameter that indicates the path to the file we want to read. Since our file is in the same folder as our script, we can simply use // This indicates that we're referring to the current folder. In this case, we want to read the file named story.txt. This function will return a string containing the content of the file we just accessed. Let's save the content we read from the file in a constant and log it to see what we've got. As we run our program, we might be surprised to see some unexpected output, a buffer followed by a series of numbers. This is the default behavior of Node.js, showing a representation of the file. To see the actual content as a string, we need to pass a second parameter to readFileSync, which specifies the encoding. You'll find several encoding options available, but UTF-8 is the de facto standard used widely across modern systems. Unless there's a compelling reason to choose something else, UTF-8 is the way to go. So let's specify this encoding and give our program another run. This time we should see the content of our file displayed clearly in the terminal. Next, let's move on to writing a text file using Node.js. This process is quite similar, but instead of readFileSync, we'll employ writeFileSync, which is specifically designed for writing text files. Again, we need to provide the path to the file we want to create or modify. We'll indicate the current folder with // and name our file examplefile.txt. The next parameter we pass is the content we wish to write. Let's add some text to this file. The optional third parameter allows us to specify the encoding. Again, UTF-8 will serve as our default, but it's good practice to make this explicit. So, I will indicate that we are using UTF-8 encoding. After we run this program, a new file, examplefile.txt, should appear. When opened, we'll see that our specified content has been successfully written. Here's an important point to note. If we run the program again, the file will not retain its prior content. Instead, the new content will replace the existing text. If we choose to change the content we want to write, we'll see that each execution reflects the updated text in the file. Now, let's explore what happens if we want to append text to the file instead of overwriting it. To do this, we'll use append_file_sync instead of writeFileSync. Let's add some more text and run the program again. We should find that the new text is now appended to the end of the existing content. If we want this new content to start on a new line, we can include the new line symbol, which is \n. Running the program will show the new text neatly appended on a fresh line. Moving forward, let's learn how to create folders with Node.js, which is a straightforward task. We can accomplish this using a method called makeDirsync. We simply pass the name of the folder we wish to create as a parameter. For instance, let's create a folder called test folder. Running this program will create the folder as expected. However, here's a quick heads up. If we attempt to run the same program again, we may encounter an exception, as Node.js cannot create a folder that already exists. To prevent this issue, it's best practice to check if the folder already exists beforehand. We can use fs.exitsync to verify if a folder or file is present. If the folder exists, exitsync will return true. Otherwise, it will return false. In our example, we'll check if a folder named test folder already exists. When we run the program now, we won't face an exception since the check informs us that the folder is present. Another useful aspect of Node.js is a global constant called dirname, which is prefixed by two underscores, __dirname. This constant always holds the path of the directory containing the currently running script. Logging the value of dirname reveals the absolute path, which can be handy for a variety of tasks when working with files and folders. Using dirname allows us to create folders with absolute paths. So let's once again call make_dir_sync, but this time we'll combine dirname with the folder name we want to create. After running the program, we'll see the test folder created successfully. We can also create a folder and a subfolder within it. Let's create test folder first, and then we'll create a test subfolder inside it. After running our program, we'll see that test folder has been established, complete with its subfolder, test subfolder, inside. Next, let's explore how to locate the path of a folder that contains more than one nested folder. We have a primary folder, and within it, a subfolder. We can definitely find the full path to this subfolder. Just like before, we can write out the full path. By the way, if you're using Windows, you can utilize backslashes. However, we generally recommend using forward slashes, since they work seamlessly on both Windows and Linux systems. Now, let's move the path to the subfolder into its own variable. Just as we did earlier, we can now use this subfolder path to create a new folder. You can run the program this way, and it will create the folder. However, a more efficient approach to find the path of a subfolder is by using the path module. So, let's see how to do this. We'll require the path module and store it in a variable called path. Now we can take advantage of path join. This method allows us to derive the full path to a subfolder. For example, if our outer folder is named test folder, that will be the first parameter we pass to join. The second parameter will be the subfolder nestled inside the outer folder. Let's log the result of join so we can verify the path of the subfolder. When we execute this program, we'll observe both the outer folder and the subfolder it contains. The great thing about the path module is that it doesn't limit us to just two parameters. We can also add dirname as the first parameter. With this, we will have the absolute path to the folder. So let's run the program again, and now we can see dirname alongside test folder and test subfolder, giving us the complete path to the subfolder. Now, creating a folder in this path becomes a breeze. The join method helps us navigate the different ways operating systems handle file paths because there are slight variations for Windows, Mac, and Linux. By using the path module, we allow it to take care of those differences for us. We simply employ the join method, and the correct delimiter is automatically applied based on our current operating system. Now, when we run the program again, we'll see that the subfolder was indeed created. Just a quick note, if we try to create the subfolder when the outer folder doesn't exist, an exception will be thrown. This is because Node.js requires the outer folder to be present in order to create a subfolder within it. One approach is to ensure we create the outer folder first, followed by the subfolder. However, there's a handy shortcut we can use. We can pass a second parameter to make_dir_sync, which is an options object. Within this object, we can specify a key named recursive. By setting the value of recursive to true, we won't need all the folders leading to the one we're creating to already exist. If any folders are missing, they will be created automatically before we create the subfolder itself.